Hi, this is Sharon Gauthier from Patient Advocate for You. This is Senior Moments, the monthly show that we have. It's an educational series that we are bringing to the community. We talk about anything that has to do with seniors. Today, I'm honored to have as a guest Julia
Mia.
Julia Remia. Julia is actually the executive director of Arden Courts, and Arden Courts is a memory care community in Connecticut, in Avon. And I've had the pleasure of having some clients that I've brought to your community, along with the one in Farmington. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to talk a little bit today about dementia, what a memory care community is, because when people think of a locked unit, their concept is probably much different than it actually is. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if you can talk a little bit about, first of all, your background and how you got involved with getting to Arden Courts, because I know you haven't been there forever, and you were a patient advocate in a major hospital. A little bit about how you got involved with the memory care community.
Well, dementia has actually been my passion since the mid-90s. When I was in college, I was asked to do a research project with one of my professors on the social and psychological impact of Alzheimer's on the family.
Really? Back in the 90s?
Back in the 90s.
Wow.
Yep. And it sparked something in me because dementia comes with such a negative connotation, and people don't know what to do when that individual starts losing their memories and can't remember who the friends are, and so these couples very often find themselves isolated. So it sparked something in me, and I've gotten involved with the Alzheimer's Association.
Yep. My purple streak is for Alzheimer's Association. Yep.
Love it. I worked for them for a little bit as doing training and education for the Alzheimer's Association Connecticut chapter, and then got involved with memory care in assisted living to be able to provide a level of care for these individuals, suffering this horrible disease.
It's a horrible disease. And I think it's one of those diseases, not that all diseases don't impact the family, but I think dementia, Alzheimer's, any memory disorders particularly affect the family because it is their memory that they start to lose. And, when do you identify that it's a big enough problem that you need to bring them into a secure area, which is what we now call locked units? It's a secure unit. And what I like about Arden Courts versus some of the other communities that are out there that might be part of an assisted living is a couple things. One is, I think that they've did themselves a big service by bringing in 24-hour nursing.
Absolutely.
Because in most of your assisted livings that many people are familiar what an assisted living is, that isn't the case. They don't have 24-hour nursing. Even though the nurses are somewhat limited in their ability to treat, as you would think of a nurse, you at least have someone there to identify a problem and be able to act on it, which is good. The second thing I liked about them is it's a standalone community.
Yes.
So if you could talk a little bit about that and the reason that they built the communities the way they did, because they're almost like their own little, I don't know what you call them. Village. Yeah.
The Arden Courts concept, which began back in the 90s, was about 5 years in the making, and they worked together with geriatricians and experts in the field of Alzheimer's disease and various dementias to come up with a concept that enables the person to feel safe and secure. So they are smaller. We have. My particular building has capacity for 64, versus some of the larger assisted livings that have a memory care unit in it as an afterthought almost, which can be up to 118 apartments, perhaps bigger, meaning that there's a lot of people around. So the design was very thoughtful and purposeful. There's paths, as you know, for walking. If someone's a wander risk and they like to be outside, our doors to the courtyard, a secure courtyard, are open, and that's purposeful.
Sorry about that.
The design of the interior is to give a feel of a small town. We have when you come to Arden Courts of Avon, there's a gazebo, there's a library, the community center, so that the person can feel as if they are in a town, and we refer to it as the community center, not programming or activities where the person with dementia might connotate that with a skilled nursing facility. And our activities are purposeful, they're engaging. But back to the plan of the building, the layout is such and purposeful that the person can come and go. There's clues and cues throughout the building so that we enable them to find their way around the building on their own and enable them that sense of freedom and independence for as long as possible.
So when someone comes to you, I mean, usually when I come, it's a pretty closed package. So I've been involved in being a registered nurse. I usually have a really good idea of exactly what's going on with my client, and know that the need is there and know that it's an appropriate setting for them to be in. But talk to me a little bit about when a family comes to you and they have concerns, like what are they looking for, and what do they need to look at that this is an appropriate setting? Because just because you have the diagnosis of dementia, a memory disorder, no matter what level it is, it's not necessarily everyone who has the disorder needs to be in a secure unit.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. When a family comes to us, the first thing that we talk about is the situation. What is the situation? What is happening at home? Is the person in any kind of danger, in the sense that perhaps in cooking they've started a fire, or they're going outside, they're up all night, the caregiver is really struggling with managing behaviors. Often the person, depending on the type of dementia, might be aggressive towards the caregiver, and we offer an alternative where there's safety. Sometimes having someone different take care of the individual makes a difference, and so some people will choose home care when it's appropriate and it's safe. By keeping someone with dementia engaged in programming, purposeful programming and socialization, it also helps to, I won't say minimize the progress of the disease, but it taps into some of the behavioral and the processes in the brain of socialization. So now somebody who may have been sitting home watching TV with a caregiver, not engaging, not getting involved with anything, now they're with people that they feel safe around. The other people that also have a memory impairment, and we'll very often see these individuals blossom in this environment.
And develop friendships with others within the community, which I always thought was interesting. So I myself have had a couple of clients that initially started at home. And one that comes to mind as you talk about activities and the importance of them is a little Italian couple that lived in Manchester, and she's actually still alive. So she's one daughter that lives in Boston, and it was really difficult for her to come down here often enough to really have a gauge of what was going on. When we got involved, it was when her father lost his license. So he had been stopped for whatever reason, and he was darn sure he was going to get that back, so he drove back to the police department. She came down, got involved. He suggested that his wife, who is very, very hard of hearing, almost stone deaf, would be the one who could drive now, and it wasn't appropriate for her because the daughter did feel that there were some memory issues. So when we initially got involved, home care was an option, not something that we offered at the time, but home care was an option. Very fortunate to get some pretty good home care providers for her, and one of the things they enjoyed the most was going out to eat. So every day they went out to eat to a restaurant. What ended up happening after about a year is that she started to wander around in the restaurant and bothering other people in the restaurant. And then there was an episode where she was so hard of hearing that the aide, of course, raised her voice to her, and someone called the police.
Oh my goodness.
So they went back home, and the aide called me, who was mortified that she knew the police was being called and coming over. So I went over, and my first comment to calm the aide down was, look, thank goodness there are people out there, good Samaritans, that have that sense that they feel something is wrong, because what if there really was something wrong? So good for them for calling in the authorities. So when they come over, we'll explain what the issue is and they'll understand quickly. So the police officer comes over. Pretty quick, they understood how hard of hearing she was. He started raising his voice for her to hear and understood the concept. Understood the issue. But here was the bigger problem. She's now confined to being in the home,
Right.
Which was not very nurturing for her and wasn't much of a life. So that started this discussion with myself and her daughter, and saying, she may be safe at home, but they're just home all the time. They never go out. Going out isn't becoming something they can do right now. So it's also isolating your dad at home. So maybe we should start looking at assisted living. So shortly after that, probably about 2 weeks later, she started leaving in the middle of the night. So we put a lock on the door. When we put a lock on the door, even though it was up high, she in the middle of the night went downstairs, got a screwdriver, and undid the lock on the door and left in the middle of the night. But the neighbors were all aware of her issue and brought her back. So that's a good example of someone who would really benefit from a memory care unit.
Absolutely.
And the daughter was very taken back by the whole idea. The first one we went to was not a good fit. We can talk a little bit about what's a good fit, what isn't, and how you get in there. So a lot of education that we provided the daughter about what it is, gave them options. We don't have any monetary connection to anybody, but we always give people options of places that we've been in. And then they made the choice based on that. So that's a good example of someone's safety, right? She needed a safe environment. And the other was, it was no longer an environment where she had any kind of happiness. They just sat in front of the television all day long, which isn't the greatest. So when someone comes to you for information, aside from some comfort on what you are and what you offer, what is the process? So like with anything, I just can't come and say to you, my mother's got dementia and I want her in this unit, and you're going to take them. So talk to me a little bit about what your process is in identifying, yes, that person is appropriate for a secure unit.
Well, we have an in-depth conversation with the family. We do, as part of our process, we do an assessment. We speak with the individual's physician, as well as the families. We do a lot of information gathering. We do a physical assessment of our own. You do want to make sure it's a good fit and that the person is appropriate and that they will benefit from the services that we have to offer for them. And then from there, we do walk with the families. We hold their hand. We are available 24/7. If there is an emergency, we, say something happens before mom moves in and mom ends up in the hospital and we get a phone call at 1 o'clock in the morning, Julie, my mom's in the hospital, she can't go home. We have 24-hour move-in, so we will do whatever we need to do to assist that family
To transition
to
you guys.
into Arden Courts, but you do have to ask a lot of questions. What is the staff to resident ratio? What kind of programs do you have available?
And talk about the programs a little bit, because I think the vision is that everyone's going to sit around and play bingo. In all of the places that I've been in, which I've been in quite a few, that's not the case at all.
No.
I find that the programming is engaging and the resident themselves are very involved. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about some of the things that you actually do and the activities that you have. I know Arden Courts in particular has that barbecue in the summertime.
Oh, yes, we
on
do.
Fridays. I always make sure to visit on a Friday, but which the residents enjoy with cheerful music and the ability to be outside. But what's some of the other things that you do?
Well, we make sure that we're meeting their religious needs. So based on what religion they are, we have a variety of different groups and individuals that come in. Whether they're Jewish, whether they're Catholic, whether they're Baptist, we do try to meet those needs. And we do have various faiths that come in. So we offer, just as far as religious services, we offer something at least once a week of a different faith. We offer exercise. You know, exercise is very, very important, so they
Yep.
get daily exercise. We try to change it up, you know, whether sometimes a chair exercise is good, but do you want to do chair exercises every day? So we'll mix it up with something that also gets the heart pumping and the arms moving, like parachutes or hockey. Believe it or not, we have them play hockey, and we do things such as cooking.
I love the cooking segments, I think, because there's so many skills involved with making something. I think it's important with kids. You know, I've done it with my grandchildren, and I think it's important with that age group because of the different steps that keeps their ability to hang on to their fine motor skills even. And when you talk about exercise, it's my understanding that all the communities have got physical therapy available.
Yes, we
to
do.
them.
Yes, we do. Some individuals may come in, and we did have an individual who came in a wheelchair after a stint in a short-term rehab.
Yeah.
And by bringing in and having that available, we have a couple of companies that we offer the families the choice to choose from, and get working with that individual. And this particular gentleman came in a wheelchair, and within, I would say, 2 months, he was up and walking totally unassisted. Doesn't happen that way with everybody, but
Right.
you know, we do like to offer that physical therapy because they're not always in a skilled environment or in a acute hospital environment. They're not getting up and walking the way that they should. And so we encourage that, and our staff will, if someone needs a wheelchair, you know, we'll walk with them and we'll make sure that they're assisted, and perhaps a wheelchair is behind them if they need to sit, but we try to keep them as mobile as possible.
And I find in almost every community I go into, if anyone has a pet, they bring their pet in there, which I really like.
Yeah.
And in your case, you have Melissa that brings her big dog.
Oh, over at the Farmington
At
community,
Farmington, yeah.
she brings her dog.
Yeah.
That dog is absolutely lovely, and the residents love it. And
Yeah.
we're working on doing that in Avon also, getting a
Yeah,
nice
I think
big
having the
therapy
pet
dog.
in there too.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the room. So, you know, I know in your community, it's set up in little villages. So there's a small little group of rooms here in 4 different areas, right? In some of the other communities, it's a little bit more open. But the rooms are private, shared. How does that work?
The rooms are all private, and we call them houses. So if I would encourage anyone who wanted to come in and take a tour, we make our unit that looks like homes. So each wing has a front porch with chairs and a mailbox and a porch light. So
And its own little kitchen.
It's
And dining area.
Yep,
Yeah.
has a kitchen that the residents are able to utilize, the dining room, living room with a TV and a fireplace, although it's an electric fireplace,
Right.
but it's a fireplace.
Right.
And the rooms are purposely small. You know, people come in, they might be coming from a traditional AL, assisted living, and they'll see our rooms and they'll go, oh my gosh, my mom's closet is bigger than this.
Yeah.
And they're purposely small so that the residents does not spend time in there. That
Right.
we want them out, we
Out in
want
the
them
community.
engaging, we want them to participate and be engaged. But the rooms themselves are private. They have a private bath. They all have a closet. We provide all the furniture to assist with that transition from the families.
And I found that interesting because not all assisted livings do that.
Most don't.
Or
Most
memory
don't.
care communities do that. So I think in some ways, like when I moved the client that we had into one of your communities, it was a surprise to me that it was furnished because she already had a 2-bedroom apartment. I'm thinking, what are we going
Yeah.
to do with it? But it was easy in some ways. It's like, oh, we can just transition. So that allows someone, if there's a real issue, to get them in there quickly.
Get-
And can they come in respite?
Yes.
Like, and explain a little bit about what respite care is.
Well, respite care, and there are some grants that are available in the state of Connecticut through the Alzheimer's Association and the Agencies on Aging. Respite is designed to give that caregiver a break, because while you want to keep your loved one at home, some of the behaviors that go along with the various types of dementia can be challenging, including someone being up all night.
Yep.
And so that caregiver is not getting a whole heck of a lot of rest. And then their health then suffers. So we offer, from a minimum of a week, we do ask that people come and stay with us for a week.
Yep.
And it's primarily for the residents' sake. You know, with that dementia, you're bringing them into a new environment, and if you leave them there for only 2 days or 3 days,
It's too confusing.
it's very detrimental to their health. So we'll offer anywhere from a week and up to a month, 2 months of respite. You know, we've had people come and stay with us for 3 months.
So someone's going away
Yep,
on
they could take
vacation
a
for a
week.
couple of weeks and they're concerned about them being the caregiver they now have. And most of the communities, I think, have respite, which is really good to have. When you mention the Alzheimer's Association, I will make sure that Howard finds the 1-800 number for Alzheimer's Association, because when I did have someone on a radio show, and we had the radio show going, come and talk to us. It was Nora Duncan, actually, from AARP, who came and talked to us a little bit about the caregivers in Connecticut, that there's like 500,000 of them in Connecticut that are unpaid caregivers,
Yes.
and that people really aren't taking seriously the dynamics that's going to be involved with caring for people with memory issues if we don't get a handle on how we're going to be providing care for them, because it's very costly if you don't have long-term care policies, which we can talk a little bit about the costs. But one of the things that I definitely have heard a lot from families about the Alzheimer's Association is that 1-800 number has really been a salvation for many of them.
Yes.
And they've told me that you can actually call at 2 a.m. and talk to someone, which was pretty amazing to me, because it's very frustrating. I know for us now providing caregivers in our particular practice, which we didn't do before, when we have a live-in, we insist that we have at least 3 people that are sharing that live-in situation for someone with dementia, because it's very challenging, it's very tiring. If they happen to have a night that they're not sleeping, you're dealing with repetitive language and questions, which, you know, is cute when you're 3, but I think when you're 90, for whatever reason, it isn't taken the same way, and it can really be taxing on you. And having that background that you have must be very helpful in the position that you're in.
I think it is. I'm able to offer the families, you know, places for resources, and you know, Arden Courts, we pride ourselves on our dementia experience. I mean, we've been doing it for well over 20 years. Everyone who comes to work for us must have a passion. They must have experience. Plus, we do training. You know, we make sure that our staff is trained in handling the different types of dementia, because the symptoms that present with somebody with an Alzheimer's type is very different from somebody who presents with a frontal temporal lobe, and there's different behaviors that go along with that, versus someone with a vascular type dementia that the family says, oh, look, mom's remembering things today, you know. And so we try to make sure that our staff is very well versed in all of those different types of dementias and how to handle the
Because some of their
individuals.
behaviors can be very disturbing, especially with the frontal lobe, like you spoke about, because that's where all your emotions are. So I always warn my children that if I end up with a frontal lobe dementia, they're in a lot of trouble, because my filter is somewhat limited already. So if my filter is completely gone, they're really going to have a problem. But those are really the ones who kind of say what they feel, and those emotions come right out there. And that's very challenging for families, because it's almost abusive. And I really feel bad for families that are dealing with someone who has that type of dementia that sometimes is related to a stroke, or it may be related to an injury. We have a gentleman now that we're providing 24-hour care for who has a frontal lobe dementia from a traumatic brain injury, and he was an alcoholic.
Oh my gosh.
So he had a combination of vascular issues and a traumatic brain injury, and he swears all the time. And so the staff that I put in there are tough. And so we have 4 nurses who actually split the week with this gentleman, but they manage him well, because they're able to stop him But that takes education,
It does.
right? That takes
It
education
does.
and a lot of support, because some people, might be so taken back. I mean, I'm an old ER nurse in inner city, so there's not a lot that tends to rattle me, but it is disturbing when you suddenly have someone who lashes out at you. And for those families in particular, I think a community is definitely a place that they should be looking at. And usually by the time they come to you, they're pretty spent, I
Yeah,
would
the-
think. They're
the
pretty
families
spent.
are, yeah.
So let's talk about cost. So care in this country is costly, private care.
yeah.
Whether it's a home care agency, which I've complained in this state for a number of years about the fact that home care in Connecticut is not licensed. It's a registration process, totally out of control. I have complained till the cows come home and nothing's being done yet. My hope is that eventually we're going to be looking at that, because it's really leaving a lot of people at risk for depending upon just hiring anybody, thinking that they can come in to manage people, and usually it's people with dementia. So there's a cost to that. There's either an hourly rate or a live-in rate. When you go into a memory care unit, there's a monthly rate, and the only coverages for that is private long-term care insurance that will pay for that. But be very careful when you look at your long-term care insurance, because
Yes.
I've had one person that I actually helped get into, it may have been the one in Farmington, only to find out after they submitted that the only coverage they had was for convalescent care. It was a very
Yes,
own policy.
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about costs.
Well, look, it is a private pay.
Yep.
We are an all-inclusive, which I would encourage your viewers that if they're looking at memory care communities, to talk with the marketing people that they're dealing with. Many communities have what they call an a la carte.
Right.
So the monthly fee is one rate, and then based on the person's level of care, there's other monies
Fees
that are
that are tucked
charged
into that.
So where we are all inclusive, and
So the monthly rate you get is the monthly rate
is
you
the
get.
monthly rate you get,
Correct.
and it's we find that it's beneficial to families who are planning out long term.
Correct, because then they know what that monthly amount is every month.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and we the only things we don't cover are going to be incontinence supplies, their medications, and their transportation. But other than that, everything else, they're 3 meals a day.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot to talk about the fact that there's mealtime.
Yep, we have the 3 meals a day, all of their housekeeping, all of their linens, all of their toiletries, soap, lotion, toothbrushes, toothpaste, hairbrushes, anything just about that you can imagine. The family does not have to worry about bringing that into the community. It's all part of the monthly fee. And we find, especially with families that have kept mom or dad home or Aunt Mary home for as long as they possibly can, and they're totally frazzled, it just takes a weight off of them, because now they don't have to worry about bringing shampoo or linens and buying furniture.
Right.
Everything, everything is included in that monthly rate.
Well, and the cost of having someone home with care, 24-hour care, you're looking at probably $300 a day anyways, minimum that someone's going to be paying for. So to me, the costs are probably comparable for not really the same kind of care.
Right.
Because there's not a lot of continuity that goes on, I feel, in home care right now in this state, or very little of it that goes on. So you're going to get that continuity,
Yep.
which is really important for someone with dementia, correct?
Yes, and you'll see
And that routine.
the routine, that having that same schedule, having the familiar caregivers around them, it goes a long way to making the resident feel safe and secure, and that's really the bottom line. We want them to be safe, we want them to feel safe. Many times people will say, I want to go home, and home isn't necessarily a place.
Right.
It's a feeling, and so if we can make them feel safe and make them feel secure, then we're
And it's just a huge relief off the family.
Yes.
So long-term care policies, we
Yep.
know, pay for a memory care unit.
They will.
And I know that anyone who has that can either call our company if they want, and we can have it reviewed for them, or they can call you guys. So in our last 5 minutes, I just wanted to talk a little bit about where the Avon Arden Courts is. You have one in Avon, which is where?
On 100 Fisher Drive.
Yeah.
We're off of Route 10, Simsbury Road. Across from Health Checks is
Yeah.
Fisher Drive. And then we also have our sister community, which is in Farmington, and that's at 45 South Road. It's right near the Yukon Healthcare Center.
So we're going to put that information up along with a contact number if anyone has any info. I know that you guys do a lot of education out in the community, which
We
I
do.
appreciate. I know that people can call because I called you not too long ago because someone stopped in my office and said, my gosh, my aunt or her sister or somebody's in an independent setting who has dementia that's creating a big problem. And my first thought when she asked me was, you know, why don't you get some information? It doesn't necessarily mean they have to come to you, but at least they're going to start with a good basis of what memory care is and what dementia is and what
Yes.
Alzheimer's is. So we'll put that information out there. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. You're listening to Senior Moments. It's a monthly educational program provided by Patient Advocate for You. We are a small care management company that I owned. I'm a registered nurse. Again, my name is Sharon Gauthier, and we'll see you next month.